Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I have with me today Ruby Deubry, and she's an integrative pharmacist and personal chef. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I'm super excited to chat with you today. I'd love to know how you got into both the pharmacy world and how you became a chef, what came first. But first, I'd love to know where you grew up and where you went to school, and which of those paths did you pursue first?
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions. So I'm from Antigua, small island in the Caribbean. I was born there. I was raised there. I still consider myself, a Caribbean girl, Antiguan at heart, always, no matter where I go. And I did my undergrad at Dalhousie, was an undergrad in immunology and biochemistry. And the idea was to go to medical school and be a doctor, but something just wasn't clicking for me. I was in my fourth year and something just wasn't clicking for me. And I was like, well, I always loved cooking. I had always had, hosted dinner parties. I had actually started a small catering business when I was in college. And I was like, you know what, I really wanted to become a chef. But it was a little bit of a difficult conversation for my parents because they were so I had talked about being a doctor kind of all my life, and then all of a sudden, I wanted to be a chef. Whereas it wasn't so much that it was new; I just didn't know how to have that conversation. So I did try to get into culinary school at that time, and it just wasn't really working out. And then just kind of like how life goes, kind of happen chance. A pharmacy school was opening up in another kind of city. And I said, okay, you know what? I think this is a happy medium between me and my parents for me to do pharmacy. And so I'm going to try one time to get in. And I got in. So I'm like, okay, this seems to be the path, because you know how it is. I was just listening to a podcast last night, and they were saying that when you really want something, but it just seems like it's just really, really hard and it's not working out for you, it's like maybe that's not the path for you, and you kind of have to let go of this tight rigidity that you have so that you can let yourself be open to the path that you're supposed to be going into. So I said, okay, that was easier that I thought to get into the pharmacy school, and I got in. Not that it was easy, but it just seemed to work out. And so I did the pharmacy, but that feeling of food, it was always a part of my life, and wanting to have that that culinary aspect, that nutrition, that holistic aspect to my life, it just never went away. So in my fourth year, I decided to try to get into a local culinary school. And I did, and I got in. So I actually ended up doing my final year of pharmacy while I was in culinary school, and I had my daughter at that time. So it was very crazy, not a lot of sleep, but it was also a really exciting time, and it really just set me on the path for where I am now.
Wow, that's like a whirlwind of things. Yeah, I love what you said about, taking signs, right, from your path, what seems hard, what seems easy, and also sometimes just going with the flow rather than resisting and controlling when it's just not working out. But that's so interesting that you were like oscillating between these two things, and now you got a chance to kind of embody both of them. So congratulations on that. And how interesting it is that the culinary school was more difficult to get into than the pharmacy school.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's not easy, programs. I don't like to say that any program is easy. Yes, I think that there's some that, you have to spend weekends studying for, but it's just time-wise. I think time-wise, just trying to juggle everything. I had to be really tight with the schedule. That's, I think, was what the real challenging part was, because once I was in the school, this was my natural, I think that is, culinary is like my natural state. And so, I had a really great time. The math, I would say, in comparison to the pharmacy math, was a lot simpler. But it was difficult in its own right, but still where I was meant to be. And so it worked out well for me.
Yeah. And there are definitely some similarities between cooking and compounding and, even the RX symbol, right, just stands for recipe. and we're just prescribing a recipe to a patient. And it used to be a lot more custom and a lot more of the compounding. And
Right.
now it's just like, specialized compounding pharmacies and a lot of standardized things that are available where people think we're just putting things into bottles. But
Yes.
there could definitely be a lot of similarities between the two.
Mhm.
And also, like, they're two sides of the same coin when it comes to health. So I'd love to get into why you feel like cooking in particular and nutrition and that side of the coin is more natural for you. It's more your natural state. Like, where did that passion come from?
Right. That definitely came from my mom. She was a nurse. She was like a whiz in the kitchen. And so I started cooking very young age when I was around 8. And so, but even before then, I was always like tugging at her feet and I wanted to peer over the counter to see what she was doing and I wanted to be involved in it. And so I think in terms of why that feels more of my natural state, I never really, I had a very good, childhood in terms of like healthy environment, and I never really got sick. And so for me, when I did get sick, the first thing that my mom would do would be to make certain foods. So that was my introduction. My thought is, as soon as I'm not feeling well, okay, what can I change in my diet to start feeling better? And so that's why for me that's a natural state and state, and that's how I think it should be, in terms of when we are noticing things in our body, what adjustments can we make in our diet, in our lifestyle, in our fitness levels, in our social life, what adjustments can we make there before we start hitting the heavy duty RX, to me, that feels like how it should be. And I think that persons would benefit more by kind of doing it that way if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And having gone through health coaching programs and functional medicine programs myself, it just seems natural now to me to define health as like this holistic concept where all those things that you mentioned play a role, as well as like fulfillment in your job and your day-to-day and your relationships. So it's like we think that, oh, as long as maybe you're eating healthy or you're taking the right vitamins or medications, well, some people, right, reduce that to, okay, that's how I will keep my body healthy. But in
Right.
reality, it's so much more than that. But food is really where it starts with making sure your body has the right building blocks so that it can know it knows what to do with them. So
Right.
we need to support them, the body, in having these building blocks, and then also have all the other aspects that we mentioned with the social and the lifestyle and fulfillment and
Right.
purpose and all of that. But the nutrition, let food be thy medicine, right? Is like how we should be viewing it. And unfortunately, now we're seeing just like a lot more on the treatment side of things and not as much on the preventative side of things, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we're trying. I see more and more effort to have that preventative be a focal point. But we're not quite there as yet, but I do see the attempt and I want to be a part of that.
Yes. So you left us at graduating from both places. So
Yes.
what were your next steps in your journey, and also starting a family? So how did that all work out?
Right. My daughter is turning 16 this year, which, for me is it's kind of wild to think about. Yeah, but there was an opportunity to come to Washington, and I decided to come. And, when I first moved here, it was really, really challenging. It was really challenging to really break into getting started at a pharmacy here, because I did have to do the exams, and for those of who are international and have to come to the US to do the exams, it is a tremendous amount of work, paperwork, and just all of these things involved. And so it was really difficult. It took me about 4 years to get all of that wrapped up. But in that time, because that's how I always do it. I started my blog. I started Savvy Chic Cuisine during that time. So, because I wasn't quite working in the pharmacy as yet, and I was just kind of waiting on my results, which took time. And so I'm like, well, I want to do something productive. I want to do, what can I do at this time? So I started my website, and I started doing some acting a little bit, actually, because I was incredibly camera shy. It might not seem so anymore, but I was really, really camera shy. So I started doing a lot of, fun things, because I knew I wanted to start doing cooking videos and things like that. And so I did that for several years, and I made great connections, and, it was a great time. And then I did get into a community pharmacy, which was great. I passed my exams, I got into community pharmacy. But again, my desire to combine my fields instead of doing them separately was just always where things were at me. I was fine that I was doing pharmacy. It was fine that I was doing culinary. I wanted to do it on a day-to-day basis, like in an integrated way. And so, things have kind of worked out so that the company that I am at now, I get to do that. I get to have my pharmacist side, on certain days. I get to have my nutritionist side. On other days, I get to combine it and weave it. And, it's a place where I'm like, yes, I feel fully integrated now. And, this is the path that I've worked towards, that I'm happy to be on.
Yeah, all that sounds amazing, but I'm sure it wasn't easy. Like looking back at it now, it's like you're summarizing, okay, this is what I did. But I'm sure, there were challenges, like you mentioned, with the pharmacy documents and all of that, and,
Yes.
work to integrate these things. So you mentioned, it's so interesting to me, it's pretty counterintuitive that you decided to take acting classes because you were camera shy, right?
Yeah.
So you're really pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. So tell us about like why that was important to you, and were you also supporting yourself as a personal chef during this time too, or what was the idea behind starting the blog and the YouTube and all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to what you said, you're absolutely right. I am summarizing it greatly. It was a lot more challenging, but I guess the outcome now, I'm just looking at the good bits, but the other bits, you're absolutely right. It was a lot more challenging. And then just to kind of mention, one of the reasons why I'm at the company that I am at now was because during COVID, there was like this period where, pharmacists were working, but then there was also this kind of plateau period where we actually, there was a furlough period and whatnot. And so that is actually how I ended up kind of looking for something else, because there was like this influx of work, and then there was kind of this decline as there were less patients coming into the pharmacy because everybody was staying at home. So that's kind of how also that path, how that happened. But in terms of my blog and why I did the acting, I just always been a very shy child. I was friendly, but I was shy. I was very shy. I also played the piano, and I played for my church, and I played for different places. It was any place that I could like hide myself behind the piano, or hide myself behind the organ, or something. Like I could never comfortably do a concert. Like it was just never comfortable for me. So I knew that I wanted to get better at it. And so I am pretty adventurous in that way, where the thing that I'm afraid of, I'm going to go kind of headlong into it to like get rid of that fear. And so the best way to me to do that was just to put myself out there. And I started doing, like the acting classes. I did some classes at Fremont, in Seattle. I actually went all the way down to Vancouver, sometimes 2 or 3 days a week, to practice and just get that in there. And it just got to a point where I got comfortable, and then I started doing more like hosting things. So it all, came together to help me in terms of being, doing my YouTube channel and just, doing Instagram videos and things like that.
So how did you start that journey with, the idea behind the blog and then all the social media and the video content? What's the kind of idea behind those, and are you teaching people with those mediums, or like what do these platforms do?
Gotcha. So I did it initially for myself. Initially, it's like I called it my online journal. I needed to have a place to just put my ideas out and be creative. And it was, like I said, during that time when I wasn't working in pharmacy, and I just needed something to like keep my mind stimulated. So that's how it started off. And then as it progressed, I realized that I wanted to do more of it. I wanted to do more hosting, and I wanted to just kind of immerse myself in, in something in wellness that I could help to inform persons, because I realized that I enjoyed it. And so where it's kind of led to now, before COVID, I was teaching classes. And now I think I'm going to be moving into more like an online platform of teaching classes, because I don't know, I don't know how much longer COVID is going to be the way that it's going to be. And one of the benefits of having like an online platform is that you can reach more people. So that is where I see myself growing my blog, just from like an online journal into something where I can inspire and educate persons, in wellness, both culinary and pharmacy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like you said, the outreach is extending beyond local people, which is, an advantage in terms of like how many people you can reach. But of course, it's nice to have intimate and in-person classes too. It's very special. And now that we have this whole quarantine situation, we appreciate that much more, I think.
Yes.
So can you tell us about what was it like to juggle these things, like, the personal chef, the trying to figure out, a pharmacy position and get that career started, and then also doing all these side projects and, the creative outlets that you have chosen to pursue? Like, what was that like?
Well, when you say it like that, it sounds it sounds like a lot. I guess when I'm doing it on, the day to day, it doesn't feel like that, because I think that this is how my life has always kind of been. Even when I was growing up, before I was doing pharmacy or culinary, I played 6 musical instruments, and I was in multiple different classes, and I was always that, I was always that person doing, multiple things. And my best friend, she jokes with me and she says that I would be so bored. I would be so bored if I was just doing one or even just 2 things. And it's not so much bored, it's just more, I think that we have this limited time on earth, and I just want to know that I did the best that I could with it. And I'd like to get to a point where I'm giving back, that I'm leaving something good with it. So all of that is to say that even though I know it sounds like, it's this and that, and it sounds like multiple things, it's not like I'm doing, most times, especially now, it's not like if I'm doing multiple things in one single day. So I'll have a day that, I will set aside as my creative day. I will have a day that I set aside, to do my, my pharmacy. So it's on different days that I get to do different things, and I make sure that I get enough rest. But it's, I think it's just kind of having that schedule that on my wall, and I keep it on my wall, that I can look at and say, okay, today is the day that I do this and that. But it just keeps my mind really fresh, and and I don't get bored with what I'm doing, and I feel like it's all coming together really nicely, that I can be proud of what I've accomplished. And then I'm like, okay, this is my legacy. This is what I've left. So it doesn't really feel, to me, it never feels crazy. And if I ever do feel like, okay, there's a lot happening too much at once, I will take a step back from one of them. I definitely do that. But generally speaking, you will find that at one point in time, a lot of things is happening with one and not so much with the other. So, there's a good balance.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think you're also speaking into fulfillment, right? So like the opposite of boredom is like
Yeah.
when you feel, fulfilled with your life and all the different brackets checked off, like we were saying, because, health and life is just like so many aspects can go into it to make us feel fulfilled and full and happy. So knowing yourself and your personality and your level of balance is really important when knowing when to take a step back, when you can take more things on your plate. And I think pharmacists in general, I just trained, and our careers and our different settings kind of demand that we compartmentalize things and kind of go and do different things and multitask, and like we kind of get good at that. And so it can work out for some and it can burn some out. So it's awesome that yourself and you've been able to find a balance with these things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think just like that's a really, really, really good important point, is that you have to know yourself, And so I know that when I am getting that feeling of, okay, I'm tired, I'm feeling tired, I will take a moment.
Yeah. What did you find fulfilling, like from all the things you've done and all the work that you've been able to create for yourself, both as a personal chef, and as being in the community pharmacy? What did you find, maybe pros and cons of some of them, if you could share with us?
Sure. So just so which one I found more fulfilling?
Yeah, and then also pros and cons of each. Like, the personal chef, was it just getting clients on your own? Like, how did that part of your career look like? And then versus the probably, I'm assuming, steady community pharmacy job.
Got it. Okay. So that would be one aspect of it in terms of the community pharmacy, is it is steady. And I think that it just uses, it's just a different part of your brain. I mean, you have to be so in tuned with multiple things that are going on. Like when when you're looking at a prescription, you're not just looking at it in terms of what's written there. You're like, does the dose make sense, for the age group? What does the renal function look like? And so that aspect of constantly having to challenge yourself and be on that kind of awareness, it sharpens your mind in a different kind of way. And that's definitely a con. A pro. But in terms of con, you'll hear a lot of community pharmacists and just pharmacists in general. The burnout when you're working full time can be quite tremendous. And as well, I don't always feel like the pharmacists get the respect that we oftentimes deserve. Customers, they sometimes shout at us, and I'm being very nice right now.
Yes. I attest to that.
Exactly. And by the time you go home, and especially if you have a family, you want to come home with a cheerful, happy, present disposition, when all you want to do is to crawl right into bed and just kind of like get up for the next day. So it can kind of have that monotony and drag to it as well. And then on the culinary aspect, I mean, it's just it's so creative, it's like you're birthing something every single time. You get to have something from conception and you get to take it all the way to, plating. And then I think it's also more social, because in pharmacy, it can be very much behind the screen. You just focus on what you're doing. Whereas with culinary, you just get to have that interaction, which is really great. The hours aren't that great though, so again, if you have a family, a lot of times, especially, I didn't work in a restaurant, but if you do, you're having those night hours, and that's not really great. And I'd say, even though I have that creative aspect that I like, one of the things that I'm not necessarily good at is I'm not very good at cold calling, so in terms of like having to call somebody or having to send out LinkedIn messages and say, hey, I see what you're doing, do you want to collaborate? It's not my forte. It's not, that's where the shyness will definitely come back and bite me. And so it's not great for me in that way. So it was good in that I through the commercials and through the acting that I was doing, I actually just got to talk to a lot of people. So a lot of people that I ended up working with was just by talking to them naturally, as opposing to going out and calling from place to place. So I think I got lucky in that aspect for me. But you know, they have their both pros and cons. I can't say that I can't think of one that I love more than the other. I really am like split right down in the middle, you know, and I love them both.
That's awesome. You found the joy in each of them.
Yes.
So how did the culinary aspect work? Or was it, you know, did you work for different families, or did you do like parties or catering? Like, I'm really curious about what that even looks like. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm way
sure.
more familiar with pharmacy than I am with culinary stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So when I first started out, I did cater for parties, you know, small dinner parties. And so, you know, I did it that way, and I got it more through word of mouth, and because that's a huge thing for any business, is just to have that referral. So a lot of the ones were just, you know, friends that I would have, and then somebody would be at the dinner party and like, oh, I really liked that. Can you come and do mine? So that's how that went. Further on, like later on, it really did turn into working for companies. So I would do teaching classes, live, you know, demo classes, you know, recipe creations. So that's what that turned into, which worked out for me because it gave me that flexibility of my schedule, which is so critical. Actually, both of my fields now, I've done it in a way that is flexible for me, which is important because I still, you know, I'm still very active in my daughter's life. And so I need to have that flexibility. So I get to choose things now that work within my schedule.
Wow, awesome. Congratulations to you and balancing all that out. So let's talk about what you do today. What are you up to? What does your schedule look like? What are you dabbling in nowadays?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, talking about what we kind of mentioned it earlier, I have taken a little bit of a step back because during COVID, I was not as active as I, you know, usually was. And it definitely, my sleep just plummeted. I was not getting good rest. I wasn't getting that renewal. And so very much recently, I have just been really focusing on my health, on my fitness. I'm a big vinyasa, you know, practicer. So just kind of doing that for me. Yeah, I feel so much better when I do it. My blood pressure is so much better. And so 2022 is definitely going to be a year where where my health is, you know, in focal point for me. But that being said, in terms of like what my schedule looks like right now, I still do go into the hospital pharmacy 1 day a week. And then the other days a week, I work at Persona. That's the company that I'm working at. And I work with them 4 days a week. And then on the weekends is my creative time. So I have my vinyasa in the morning, and then I go to my favorite coffee shops and I just sit and I plan, you know, what I want to do for the week. And then on Sundays, you know, I'll do whatever it is that I had planned. But I'm keeping things kind of short and sweet right now, just so that I can focus on my health. I am working out, you know, 4 to 5 days a week. And so I just want to make sure that I'm not doing too much, just, you know, just like what you said. So right now I'm just kind of keeping, you know, everything on their compartmentalized days so that I can have enough energy at the end of the day to just focus on myself and focus on my fitness. And I think later on in the year, when I feel a little bit more balanced, I do plan on stepping up and getting back to doing more videos because I really miss doing them. But for right now, I am taking a little bit of a step back so that I can fit everything in, but still just address some of the issues that I know I've been having.
Yeah, self-care is certainly very important. And, you know, in light of all the bad that happened with COVID, it also allowed people, I think, to reevaluate, you know, priorities in their life and health and time with family and all these things. So, you know, COVID is showing us that, but also seasonally, you know, we're in winter time and it's a time to kind of slow down. And like you said, later on when it's summertime, you can pick up and become more active and, go with the flow.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So let's see. How did you hook up with the company you work for now, Persona, and what's that like?
Yeah, it was LinkedIn that popped up. It was like a LinkedIn message that it said, you might be interested based on on your profile. And it was during that period that I had mentioned that pharmacy had been furloughed. And so I was not going in to the pharmacy, as often, and I needed a source of income. I mean, you have a kid to take care of and you need a source of income. And so I decided to follow those breadcrumbs and I reached out and actually they were looking for a nutritionist. And I thought, well, I am that too, but maybe they could use another pharmacist. And it turned out that they could. So that's how that happened.
So what does the day-to-day with them look like?
Yeah, so also at that company, my life is just split. let's just say, that's just how my life is. So even there, I have multiple things that I do, but all within the same realm of pharmacy and nutrition. So I work predominantly with our nutrition team. So when customers have questions about what's the best supplements to take, how does it work, do they have interactions with my medications, that's where, that's the kind of thing that I will do on a daily basis. You can also book an appointment with me if there are more advanced questions that you have. So you can book a direct appointment with me, which are free. And that's, one of the perks of, of our company. And then there are days where, it's more pharmacy, we have the database that we need to continually build, or just different projects that are more pharmacy related. And so I have a day set aside for that. So even there, it's still a little bit split, but always coming back into that holistic pharmacy, culinary, wellness, world that I've built for myself.
Awesome. So we're just about to wrap up, but I wanted to know how and why you came to this structure and conclusion of like, this is how you build out your week. You're still keeping a foot in the pharmacy in a hospital setting, and then also 4 days with this company where you're a pharmacist and nutritionist. Like, how is that strategic? Is that just because it's fulfilling to you to do these things, or what's the thinking behind that?
I love that question, actually. That's an interesting question. So there's part of it is strategy, and part of it is, when you are working someplace that you enjoy and you like your team, I tend to like to hold on to the things that I like, and I like the people that I work with, and so if it works, then I'll continue to do it. If at some point I have to reevaluate, then I will do that. So part of it, yes, is just pure fulfillment. This is how it works for me, and this is what I feel good doing. The other part of it is that memory of how difficult it was for me to transition from Canada to the US. And there is a different skill that working in direct patient care is, as opposed to working kind of behind the scenes on a computer. And I don't ever want to lose that skill, because especially, not knowing how, nobody could have predicted COVID, which means that in a year or two from now, there's going to be something else that I might not have been able to predict, or we might not have been able to predict. And I always want to make sure that at any moment I can practice here or there, or wherever I need to practice without too much, have to do. I don't want to ever have to do what I did ever again. So I want to make sure that, I'm keeping relevant in hospital pharmacy or community pharmacy, just because it's a much easier transition if you have to go to another country.
Yeah, makes sense. And it's like you lose what you don't use, right?
Exactly.
So
exactly. And I don't want to lose anything.
yeah, so just using all your skills to the max. I love it. All right, well, I'd love to jump into a rapid fire round with you to just finish things off.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so question number one, what drives you and your mission? Like, what is your mission and why are you so passionate about, preventative medicine and integrative pharmacist work and, supporting patients in a holistic way?
Well, my daughter has and always, will be my driving force, not just in terms of like, yes, I want to provide for her, but I imagine the kind of world that I want her to live in, and I want to contribute to that. So definitely, she's my driving force.
Awesome. And then you also mentioned like leaving a lasting legacy in the world. Have you kind of thought about or conceptualized about what that might be, or what's your message to the world that you want them to know?
I have it. It's right on my vision board, but it's still private right now. So, but rest assured, it is there. I have my mission, my vision, and exactly what I want it to look like. And as time passes, I'll definitely share more of it. But there is something very special that I want to do.
Okay, well, you've definitely intrigued me. So keep us posted on that if there's any updates.
I will.
And this is an interesting question that I like to ask, and it's even more so because you're a chef. What is your favorite food to cook and to eat?
Well, I get this question a lot, and I don't have a special food. I just have a special type of cooking that I like. So I was taught French cuisine, and that's always has a special place in my heart. But from the Caribbean, I'm accustomed to the spices and just the different just the different flavors that mingle. So my type of cooking is French Caribbean fusion. So I find that I tend to gravitate towards the interesting ways that people will fuse foods from different cultures. So I think it's just a specific type of food as opposed to, or sorry, style of food as to a specific, like one single type of food.
Ooh la la. Well, I have to ask, give us an example of like one dish that's a fusion.
Yeah, sure. So let's see. Over Thanksgiving, I had made a Christophine au gratin. So Christophine, I know, Christophine, also called chayote, is it's one of those foods that can be used either savory or sweet, but mostly it's used kind of in a savory way. It kind of has a texture that's similar to green papaya. Do you ever use green papaya in your cooking?
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't have a strong flavor.
In Thai cooking, I think they use
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. They use it a lot in Thai cooking, and we use it a lot in the Caribbean as well. And so it doesn't have a strong flavor on its own, but it's very good at absorbing like other flavors. So I did a Christophine and squash au gratin, and au gratin is French, so it was this really nice blend that my guests had never had before. And it was the first time that I made it. I was just like, I'm just gonna put this together and let's see how it comes out. And it was great. It's definitely something I'm gonna add now to my recipe list.
Awesome. I have to say, I usually cook like that. I'm not very methodical. So I would make a terrible chef. It's like,
I usually, it depends on what it is. Like baking, you definitely have to be more specific. But in cooking, especially when you're trying, you just kind of have to start. And then as you go along, you will fine tune. But when you're just doing a recipe for the first time in particular, you just kind of have to put it together and go from there.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a good baker at all. I just avoid baking.
Come to one of my classes then. We'll cook together.
Awesome. Okay, my husband will be very happy actually if I do. So lastly, I'd love to know, well, I'm actually afraid to ask, but what are your hobbies? I know we already covered some of them, but any other hobbies that are unexpected that you haven't shared with us yet?
Oh boy, I've let you guys know everything. You know my whole life now. Let's see, is there anything that I have one. I just started Latin dancing. My sister is kind of like an amateur professional, so she doesn't get paid or anything like that, but she does these professional competitions and she's really good. And so I had gone to visit her and she had taken me to some of her studio, and I was like, I really like this, so I started Latin dancing, and I it's going to be my thing, so you can watch out for some videos on that.
I love it. Yeah, I love all types of dancing. So bring it. All right, perfect. Well, Ruby, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your wisdom and your joy with us. And I'd love for you to share where people can come find you and learn more about your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate, I know that you reach out to our network, and really highlight what pharmacists are doing and integrative pharmacists are doing. And I think that that's just so critical and important. So thank you for having me. And then if you're interested in seeing more, you can visit me at rubydeubry.com, RUBYDEUBRY.com. And then on the site, we'll have the links to, my Instagram and my YouTube. So you don't have to worry about remembering it. But you can either follow me at Savvy Chic Cuisine or nutritionist.ruby. Those are my two Instagram handles, but you don't have to remember it off the top of your head. You can just visit my website and just check out the recipes. And if you like it, let me know.
Awesome. Well, I'll have those links in the show notes, and I'll probably be checking out those recipes myself. And it was an absolute pleasure. So I wish you an amazing evening, and I will see you soon. Maybe.
Bye.